Under a heavy rain, the story begins, showing a very tense atmosphere on the horizon. With that, we see the Liu clan's palace, the setting for a great and terrible tragedy. At this moment, swords clash in a life or death duel between two very powerful warriors. The long-haired young man then questions the reason for so much cruelty against his entire family, but his opponent just smirks maliciously while preparing a strike charged with a lot of energy. A massive explosion follows, throwing the defender far away with extreme force. The villain then mocks his rival's dark power and promises to end everything right then and there. However, the wounded hero tries to fight back, but is caught off guard by a very swift move. Suddenly, several masked fighters appear, using heavy chains to surround the exhausted young man. With that, he ends up completely immobilized by the metal shackles and can no longer move. Angered, the prisoner complains about the cowardice of those who call themselves righteous but attack from behind. At that instant, the enemy takes advantage and strikes the protagonist's chest with a short blade. He then claims he will steal all of the defeated one's techniques to level up. As a result, the young man starts to lose a lot of blood and ends up falling weakly onto the wet ground. While the poor young man struggles on the ground, his rival lets out a cruel laugh, celebrating his victory. Even though he's badly hurt, the warrior keeps his eyes open, staring at his tormentors with pure hatred. He then swears he will return as a specter to seek revenge against every single one of those traitors. In the darkness of his final moments, a reddish energy begins to float around the combatant's remains. At that, a mysterious figure made of scarlet aura appears over the body lying in the rain. Finally, a glowing screen announces that the revenge system has been successfully activated for the new host. At that moment, a mysterious female silhouette appears and says she's going to lend a hand to the young man floating in the deep void. Meanwhile, in the real world, a huge beam of golden light shines atop a sacred mountain, marking the beginning of the final ascension. With this, everyone celebrates the success of the great hero, who has finally managed to open the celestial gates to become a powerful immortal. In this place, several girls are very emotional, cheering for the success of the fighter they so intensely admire and love. But far from all this celebration, a beautiful pink-haired young woman is relaxing peacefully in her wooden bathtub, enjoying the water. Then she notices a strange shadow moving and freezes in fear upon realizing she's not alone in the dark room. Suddenly, the intruder leaps over the bathtub, sending water flying everywhere while startling the defenseless young woman. With a very sinister smile on his face, the mysterious man asks if she really doesn't know who he is in this tense situation. He then introduces himself as her future master, revealing he is the same warrior everyone thought had departed from this cruel life. Shocked, the girl can't believe what she's seeing and asks how he can be alive after everything that happened at the palace. She gets even more nervous, remembering that everyone saw his tragic end during the brutal battle that destroyed the entire clan. But the protagonist holds the young woman firmly and says he couldn't stay gone knowing there are so many beauties around him. Shortly after, he lets her go without any gentleness, letting her fall to the floor while displaying all his new and terrifying power. Fallen and very irritated, the woman says the other hero has already ascended to the upper realm and dares the young man to end her life. The dark-haired man just looks at her with disdain and states that she has it all wrong, as his plan is to save her from a great and terrible lie. At that moment, the young man shows a small, strange red flower in his right hand that emits a very intense magical glow. He explains that her former ally lied the whole time and uses the mystical plant to prove that the truth is very different from what she thinks. As soon as she looks at the object, the flower's reflection shines brightly in her green eyes, causing an immediate mesmerizing effect. With that, the young woman becomes confused while a system message announces that the conversion process for the new ally has successfully begun. Finally, the reborn man watches the scene with a superior gaze, satisfied to see his plan for revenge working perfectly. The system then reveals that the plan is to convert all of the enemy's allies to achieve the final revenge. Furthermore, the main mission is to end the life of the Son of the Heavens to receive the supreme blessing. With a confident smile, the Avenger turns to the girl on the floor and says that the games can begin. With that, he moves forward quickly and forcefully seizes the young woman's neck, leaving her unable to react. He then lifts her into the air and warns her not to play the victim or act all honorable. Just then, a black cat appears out of nowhere and starts rubbing against the legs of the house's new master. The young man then declares that from that moment on, she will be his personal servant and will obey everything. He even compares her to the submissive little cat that appeared just to annoy her even more. But the young woman refuses and yells that her one and only master will come back to save her from his hands. The protagonist throws her to the ground in a bold manner and says she doesn't even know the truth about her hero. Completely confused, the girl asks what truth that could be while trying to get away from him. Meanwhile, in the upper realm, the great villain is meditating peacefully near a waterfall. Then, one of his servants appears, flying in desperation to deliver some very urgent news to his master. The messenger reports that something terrible has happened to his beloved down in the lower realm of mortals. At this, the immortal becomes furious and wonders who would have the courage to mess with his woman. Using a magic mirror, he sees the exact scene of his rival holding his beloved intimately in his arms. Shocked, he realizes his old enemy is alive and unleashes an aura of pure rage and power. He then shouts that the persistent specter dared to touch his woman and that the first time wasn't enough. But a servant advises him that as an immortal being, it's impossible for him to return to the lower realm now. Out of patience, the man orders the Valkyries to descend immediately and handle the situation. The immortal fumes, repeating his rival's name with great hatred as the messenger obeys. Back in the lower realm, the scene takes place in the Liu clan's bathroom, where everything is happening. Suddenly, the wooden door is kicked in with great force by someone invading the premises. It was several guards who arrive shouting for their lady, ready for combat. They advance with spears and order the pervert to release the young woman immediately. But the young man simply claps his hands with a mocking smile on his face. With that, a powerful shockwave throws all the warriors away without any effort. The impact is so strong that they end up severely injured with their clothes torn. The hostage is shocked to see that high-level warriors were defeated in an instant. After that, the Avenger decides it's time to leave that place to continue his plan. He then leaps through the roof, carrying the young woman in his arms to a safer location. In the air, he says he's going to show her the true face of her beloved and false hero. Now in a forest, the young woman questions what he's doing, and the man says he's going to heal her. He explains that the flower of desire she received is actually a poisonous and evil item. The girl doesn't believe it and says it's a lie, as the flower couldn't be a dangerous poison. The young man then touches her forehead and says that seeing is believing, to prove he's right. At that moment, an intense light shines from his finger and begins to reveal the whole truth to the young woman. With this, she has a strange vision of her former master with a much stronger body. The vision shows that the villain's essence is a parasite that comes out from inside the magic flower. He explains that the flower feeds on her, and the parasite uses that energy to strengthen the enemy. The young man then asks if she understands that she's nothing more than a cultivation vessel for the enemy. With that, the young woman finally realizes the sickness in her heart was caused by the villain and that he is to blame for everything. A memory from the past shows the false hero consoling her and blaming the illness for her family's tragedy. Devastated, the young woman cries upon realizing she gave her all to someone who only deceived her with an evil plan. The Avenger then asks if the idea of the parasite makes her sick, but she refuses to believe it's real. He calls her pathetic and starts to leave, but the girl asks how she can get revenge with the enemy in another realm. The young man then turns around and states he has his own methods to reach the traitor, leaving the young woman surprised by the revelation. Desperate, She runs to him and begs him to tell her his secret plans for revenge. Then, to get his help, the young woman accepts the offer to become the personal servant of the new master who has appeared. With a sly smile, he asks if she really knows what is expected of a private servant like she will be. Though embarrassed, the girl confirms that she understands perfectly what her new duties will be from now on. The young man then comments that it doesn't matter if they are outside to begin their new arrangement. In the misty forest, she gives in and promises to follow all the orders her new master gives her without question. With that, her clothes fall gently to the forest floor, marking the beginning of a new and strong alliance. In the distance, we see a light approaching quickly while the pair is distracted in the middle of the dark bamboo grove. At that moment, an old warrior arrives flying and promises his master that he will execute the rival down below. But another servant asks what should be done with the girl, since she got involved with their enemy. Furious, the immortal orders his men to end the lives of both traitors without any mercy. Back in the forest, the young man holds her in his arms and says that now that she is his servant, he will treat her very well. She worries about the danger, but he reveals he's the sole survivor, and she realizes he is stronger than the villain. A powerful, bluish energy manifests in the warrior's hand, showing that his strength is returning. He says he recovered his power thanks to her spiritual roots, and now the young woman demands that he take responsibility. The young man then laments that if his own roots were intact, he would have already reached a much higher level. At this, the system reminds him that the reward for converting her is precisely the restoration of his cultivation and power. Filled with determination, the protagonist focuses his eyes on his goal of revenge against his great enemy. As they were preparing to leave the forest, something unexpected happens and suddenly stops them. At that, the pink-haired young woman turns around, frightened, as she senses a presence rapidly approaching them. The Avenger acts fast and protects her from several blades of energy that fly toward them at high speed. In the distance, an old warrior floats in the air and accuses them of shameful acts in the middle of that sacred bamboo grove. The servant then points his sword and says he will act in the name of the heavens to put an end to the two degenerates. But the dark-haired man scoffs at him, asking if acting for the heavens means being a lapdog for his traitorous master. The old man becomes furious with the young man's audacity and doesn't accept being mocked by someone he considers already defeated. The enemy then summons dozens of golden swords and promises to cut the pair into 1,000 pieces without any mercy. Immediately after, the blades fly like a deadly rain toward the two, who are cornered on the ground. However, the protagonist stands in front of his new ally to protect her from the massive oncoming attack. The golden swords float around the villain's servant as he prepares for the final blow against the pair. With a mocking smile, the Avenger faces the attack and asks if that's all the enemy can do. He then releases his own bluish energy, which clashes with the swords, and declares that he cannot lose. The old warrior is shocked to see his power being blocked and calls them mere insignificant warriors. Full of rage, the servant questions how they dare to be so insolent in front of a high-level cultivator. With that, the young man kneels, feeling the pressure of the attack, and throws his new ally away from the danger. Fallen on the ground, the young woman realizes that the enemy's barrier can suppress a warrior's essence. The villain's servant mocks them and says that warriors without spiritual roots deserve to be crushed by cultivators. Just then, the enemy launches a deadly strike, and the desperate young woman can't even get up to escape. Seeing the imminent danger, the protagonist yells at the system, asking where his promised rewards are. Then a beautiful woman appears out of nowhere and announces that his cheat code has finally arrived to help in the fight. A golden aura envelopes the Avenger, and the system informs him that his roots and cultivation have been restored to maximum power. With a smile on his face, he reaches the intermediate stage of the great vehicle realm, feeling his strength return. With a simple hand movement, he deflects the powerful attack, creating an impressive wave of blue energy. The villain's servant is completely shocked, not understanding how that could have suddenly happened. The young man then asks with a smile who said that being a martial artist prevented him from being a cultivator. Suddenly, the old warrior is surrounded by several blue energy swords that attack him from all sides. The protagonist then calls the enemy his master's little dog and sends him straight to the underworld without a second thought. As a result, the servant is struck by numerous blades, and his body is vanquished in a very intense and quick scene. After the victory, the Avenger observes the body fallen on the ground while his new ally watches everything up close. Impressed by so much power, the young woman realizes he is the path to her revenge, and he notices she didn't feel his aura. She comments that not even her former master can manipulate others' power into swords and asks who he really is. Just then, the system announces a new mission to take the sword spirit of the revenge target, the great Xu Tian. The young man finds this interesting and recalls that the Tian's word is a divine artifact of calamity, coveting the item. He then asks the girl to take him to the sword spirit, and she agrees as they leave for a new location. In a distant place, the sword spirit has a strange premonition and becomes fully alert. With that, the woman with the bandaged body wonders about the reason for that weird feeling she suddenly felt. Meanwhile, the protagonist and his new ally walk disguised in the middle of a crowd of people. With his face covered by a hood, the Avenger observes the place with a serious and very determined look. The young woman then informs him that there is a daily limit to enter the mountain and they need to hurry. Arriving at the entrance of the Immortal Sword Mountain, they see a sign announcing 2 remaining spots. The pink-haired girl is relieved to see they made it in time to enter the place, but a guard stops them and says the quota is already full, and the young man questions him about the 2 spots. The employee then explains that by order of the sect leader, the spots are reserved for a young master. The guard also advises the hero to behave so as not to offend the important person who is about to arrive. Annoyed, the Avenger confronts him and asks if the guard isn't afraid of offending him first. He then jumps over the gate, and the other guards accuse him of daring to trespass on the mountain of the sword spirit. The young man then unleashes his aura and challenges the guards to do something about his invasion. His ally thinks that not even the sect leader is a match for him, and that the disciples don't sense the danger. With a powerful shout, the protagonist releases a wave of blue energy to push all the guards away. The blast of power rushes toward the soldiers, who try to defend themselves from the attack. As a result, all the guards' swords shatter into pieces, leaving their leader shocked. The guard then starts to cry desperately for having just gotten that precious sword that broke. Suddenly, an imposing figure appears on top of a giant sword and asks who dares to be so insolent. The guards rejoice upon seeing that the sect leader has arrived to save them from the mysterious intruder. The guards then begin to laugh mockingly upon seeing their master arrive to handle the commotion. With that, the protagonist points at the sect leader and asks if entry is now bought with money. The mountain master confirms that the place is for the favored, and that having cash brings that favor. The young man then questions if that's why the famous son of the heavens ignored the limit and paid to get in. The sect leader floats in the air with an air of superiority while facing the intruder down below. He then explains that the villain's wealth allowed him to find the strongest sword spirit. Furious, the Avenger shouts that the fortune belongs to his clan and that the rival stole it from him. With a bluish aura surrounding him, the hero says that this is all a bunch of nonsense and gets ready. Shortly after, he throws a coin on the ground with force to show his contempt for the situation. The young man charges forward and asks, since when can thieves act with such arrogance and superiority? The mountain master is surprised by the sudden attack and draws his sword to defend himself. With that, the leader uses a blade of fire to block the intruder's strike, who doesn't back down one bit. The clash of their 2 powers creates an explosion of red energy that spreads throughout the courtyard, but the protagonist manages to dodge the blades and prepares a direct punch to end the fight. The Avenger closes in quickly, leaving the sect leader shocked by his speed and power. Just then, the Mountain Master realizes that even though he's a martial artist, the rival's cultivation is not inferior. So, the leader decides to resort to calling upon his sword spirit to help him in the battle that is starting. As a result, a beautiful woman made of blue energy appears in the air, ready to attack her master's enemy. The young man's ally is startled to see a spirit with a human form and senses the great danger. Suddenly, another spirit appears and warns the hero to be careful of the attack coming from behind. The spirit then acts fast and manages to grab the intruder's leg in a very swift move. But he flips her in the air and holds her in his arms, wondering if she is a sword spirit. With a smile, he says that she'll serve as a great and perfect warm-up for him. Meanwhile, the other pink-haired spirit launches a fire attack towards the master. The woman in blue stares at him up close, with a surprised expression on her serious face. The sect leader is shocked to see his own sword spirit in the rival's arms. He then yells at her and asks what on earth she is doing with his enemy. But the Mountain Master just stares at him with a serious and very suspicious look. The Avenger asks if he still wants to fight, but the leader surrenders on the spot without hesitation. With that, the scene changes to inside the sect's main grand hall for a tense conversation. The master bows and says the senior can ask for whatever he wants, and he will grant it immediately. Just then, the spirit asks to be returned, as the leader cannot keep his position without her around. The young man says he will release her as soon as he gets a sword spirit much stronger than her. Desperate, the master cries and promises to find any kind of spirit the senior desires. The Avenger then states that the spirit he really wants is the most powerful of all. He then reveals that the name of the spirit he's looking for is the famous and powerful Jing Xin. The leader is terrified upon hearing the name and realizes it's the spirit of the son of the heavens, the villain. Seeing the difficulty, the hero says he won't insist if it puts him in a bad situation. He then says he will just take the woman in blue and leave the mountain forever. The master panics, knowing that if he loses his spirit, his position as leader is over. The spirit in blue thanks her new master with a blushing face, while the other ally gets jealous. At that, the sect leader kneels and hands over a green token that leads to Jing Xin's location. With the object in hand, the young man prepares for his next mission of revenge against the traitor. The master then begs him not to take his spirit away, and the girl becomes smitten with the hero. But the Avenger just stares at the token seriously, completely ignoring the older man's plea. Meanwhile, at the peak of the mountain, a blindfolded woman urgently calls for her master. She holds a magic mirror and asks if they really need to get rid of Miss Lu Ruyan. In the reflection, the villain explains that the girl is under the protagonist's control and living very poorly. With a cruel smile, he then orders his spirit to grant liberation to the poor, suffering young woman. Far away, the hero and his two companions climb the stairs towards the mountain peak. They then arrive at a stone platform outside the great temple of the sword spirit. With that, the young man places the green token on a stone pedestal, which begins to glow intensely. He then pushes the object, activating the secret mechanism that opens the passage to the sacred place. The Avenger warns the two girls to stay outside and not to enter under any circumstances. Immediately after, he enters the temple alone to find the most powerful sword spirit of all. The pink-haired girl wonders if he can win, since it's been a long time since she's seen this Jing Xin. Inside the place, the warrior walks cautiously through a corridor filled with mist and bamboo. He then climbs onto the temple roof to get a better view of the place and find his main target. He then approaches from behind the blindfolded woman, who was distracted looking at the mirror. Sensing his presence, the woman turns and asks who he is and what he is doing in there. With a fiery aura around him, he introduces himself as her new and only master from now on. At this, the sword spirit creates a purple flame in her hand, preparing to attack the intruder. Furious, she calls him insolent and launches a powerful energy strike towards the warrior. As a result, A large wave of purple power rushes forward to finish the young man off right there. But the Avenger blocks the attack and compliments her power, saying it lives up to her great fame. The woman then moves in for hand-to-hand combat and says the battle ends at that very moment. However, in a scene of silhouettes, the hero manages to stop her attack in mid-air effortlessly. He then grabs the woman's arm and prevents her from continuing with her surprise attack plan. With a confident smile on his face, the young man states that he thinks the fight isn't over just yet. Outside, the girl in blue starts to feel unwell and wonders what is happening to her. She then turns to the pink-haired girl and asks who she is and what she is doing in that place. Her ally realizes she has returned to normal and worries that the hero's power has completely vanished. Back in the fight, the bandaged woman points a sword at the back of the protagonist, who is standing still. He thinks that he can't get distracted and that, fortunately, his secret control art is working. Confused, she orders him to release the spell that is controlling the young Lu Ruyan at that moment. She then threatens him, saying she will make him regret it if he doesn't obey her order immediately. The Avenger smiles mockingly and questions the word sorcery she used to describe him. He then asks if that's what her former master, the villain Xu Tian, told her about everything. Annoyed, the woman presses the sword against him and yells that he is not allowed to ask questions. At this, the young man thinks that his clan's secret art for controlling spirits is truly effective. The young man says that if she takes him out, the spell will disappear, but he dares her to try it. Annoyed, the woman accepts the challenge and promises to grant the intruder's death wish right there. But at the moment of the final blow, she simply can't move to end his life. With that, the sword falls from her hand, and she wonders why she can't actually attack him. She then questions why she can't deliver the fatal blow, even though she really wants to. Seeing her confusion, the Avenger simply turns and starts to walk away without saying anything. He then explains that his clan used a secret art to enslave sword spirits. At that, he reveals that the villain attacked his family to steal this technique and obtain a strong spirit. A memory shows the traitor attacking the protagonist without mercy to obtain the clan's power. As a result, the hero's clan suffered a calamity that nearly wiped them all out at once. Shocked, the woman listens to the account and finally understands the origin of that whole past tragedy. He says that normally a strong spirit like her wouldn't be affected, but the villain acted before she could mature. With tears in her eyes, the beautiful woman is left speechless by the whole truth that has been revealed. She then kneels and calls him master, while he explains how Xu Tian manipulated her from the beginning. The young man then places his hand on her head and says, this is just the deserved punishment for the traitor. He steps away and comments that the enemy must already know he's alive because she knew his name. At that moment, the warrior picks up the magic mirror the spirit was using to communicate. With a smile, he announces that her sword spirit now belongs to him and that the revenge has begun. The new ally just watches the scene in silence, processing everything that just happened. On the other side, the villain appears in the mirror, screaming the rival's name with pure hatred in his eyes.